Hey folks, Sty here. Still pounding out Sty stories. Don't worry, I'm not going to run out. I was looking at my list, and with all the ones I've done so far in this single sitting, I haven't even touched 10% of them that are still outstanding to do. So, no, we're not going to run out for a long time. And I'm still adding to the list thanks to your suggestions. Please, all of a sudden people quit making suggestions. Feel free. If you have a topic you want me to do a Sty story about, I think I can do one. I've been down many a dusty road, so I think I could probably meet your requests. So feel free, down in the comments, go ahead and say, hey, Sty, tell us a story about this or that or the other thing. And if I can't, I can't. I may be able to tell you a story that relates to somebody else that has been through such a thing. Whatever. Feel free to leave me suggestions in the comments. I love them. Okay. Well, let's see. We're going to get on with this story. This one's going to be called What I Would Do for Rutabaga Stew. Now, I hope everybody out there knows what I'm saying when I say Rutabaga Stew. At least knows what a rutabaga is. I wish I had one in the kitchen. I'd bring that big old ugly vegetable out here and show it to you. You know, they're bigger than a grapefruit, hard as a rock, real pungent smelling. But I would suspect that 90+% of you folks out there know what a rutabaga is. And surprisingly enough, there's a lot of people who say, I ain't eating no rutabagas. No, I don't. I know. I love rutabagas. I love them. And boy, what I would do for rutabaga stew. So let's get on with this story. Living in the northwestern Rocky Mountains, we were living the camp life. It was the beginning of a year-long adventure for our family, and we were living in a stationary set camp, and we did all kinds of things that summer. Boy, we learned the woods. We learned a lot. Boy, we learned a lot that summer. That winter was just as educational, if not more. But that summer, I loved just exploring, and I started to explore from our camp. I started to explore a little farther out, a little farther out, a little farther out, every single opportunity I got. Well, our children were small enough that I didn't take them with on those types of outings because there was a chance that I'd be stuck out overnight. There was also a chance of running into not so friendly creatures out there. Big critters that could hurt you. I didn't want my children in that situation if I could avoid it. So the ex-wife would tell me, strike out, go ahead, go strike out. Just make sure to bring something good home. Like fresh venison, a nice long stringer of fresh brook trout. Yeah, anything I could come across, bring it on home. We'll eat it up. So I went out one day, and I was just going to circle the perimeter of our camp out about a half a mile. That is not far at all. Well, typical of me, it didn't take me long to do the whole perimeter, and I said, what the heck? I hiked another half mile away. Now I'm a mile out from camp, and I'm going to do the full perimeter. I crossed several creeks. I think probably about 4 or 5 creeks on that hike. And one of them was exceptional. And I was on an outcrop of rock, and I'm looking down into this pool, and there's some beautiful brook trout in there. Oh, and it was loaded with them. I knew that all I had to do was cut myself a stick, take a little bit of fishing line off my cowboy hat, tie a fly to it, boom, boom, boom. I've got a stringer full of trout. I'm heading home, and we're eating trout for supper. All of a sudden, I get a whiff of something. And I'm going, oh my word, is that good smelling? Somebody's cooking something, and it smells great. And I knew it couldn't be coming from our camp, because our camp was the opposite direction of where the smell was coming from. I knew that camp was downwind of wherever that's coming from. Then I thought, I'm going to try to follow that smell and see who's cooking what. Well, I started following that creek. It seemed like it was coming along from down the creek. Further I got, the stronger the smell. Oh, it was so good. The smell was so good. I was just drooling from the thought of maybe the person's willing to let me eat. Well, I hiked through the woods, and now this is bushwhacking. There are no trails. I'm going up that creek and bushwhacking, and because of outcrops of rock and cliffs, I was crossing the creek back and forth, working my way up that creek. All of a sudden I lost that smell. I couldn't smell anymore. I thought, oh no, no, no. Whoever it was, they're done. They're done cooking. They're eating their lunch or dinner, and I missed it. And I was unfamiliar with that creek and where it actually ran. But I had a rough idea of the canyon it was running through. So I decided, well, I'm going to turn hard north, and I'm going to cut across the creek, and I'm going to just head north, and I'll go about a mile and a half. Then I'm going to turn, and I'm going to head east, due east, and that should put me within a quarter mile of camp. Well, I struck off through the woods. I'm going through the woods, and I see a black bear going through the woods, and he's heading east. And I thought, wonder where he's off to, because he's not paying attention to me, and I'm right out in the open. He can see me through the timber, no ifs, ands, or buts, and I'm not making any unnatural noises, but I'm moving around. He should have noticed me. So I started walking in his general direction to see if I could get his attention at least. I didn't want to make a bunch of noise and startle him. I thought if I could softly make his attention, then it'll be a safe encounter for both of us. Now I'm not one that intentionally wants to get myself in the face of a black bear. But I got within an easy 20 yards of that bear, and he never once looked my direction or the opposite side of him. He never stopped and turned around and looked behind him. Very common behavior of bears. They're looking around. They're always checking out what's going on around them. Not this guy. He's just heading in that one direction. And that had me curious. So I let him keep wandering off until he got about 75, 100 yards from me. And I come in behind him. and I was able to keep my eyes on him 90% of the time. The terrain was just perfect for it. There's only a couple times where he popped down a little rise, and then I'd wait a little while, come out on the top of that rise, and I'd see him down below, or I'd see him coming up the next one, and I followed him. And it was almost a mile and a half. I followed him. Then I smelled it. I could smell that smell again. He hit his brakes and he turned and he's pointing kind of south, more south. And I thought, he knows where that smell's coming from, and he's pointing at it. So I backed off. Oh, probably another 75, 100 yards, and I started heading in that direction. Now I'm bushwhacking all the way through. All of a sudden that smell's getting so strong, I can't believe it. And I come out, and there's this little, like a turnaround that covers maybe a quarter of an acre. And sitting in the middle of that is a little camper and a pickup truck. And there's somebody out at a fire pit. So I hailed the camp, and I heard someone yell, "Come on in." So I hiked into the camp. And oh, the smells just got better and better the closer I got. I get there, and here it's a person that I'm friends with. We were very familiar to each other. Glenn was the fellow's name, and his wife Cindy, and their little boy. Here they are camping, and I'm looking around the site, and it seems familiar. And I walked in, and Glenn sees it's me, and he says, "What are you doing here? What are you doing coming from that direction?" And I told him what I did, that I smelled whatever he's cooking, and I tried to follow it. And I said, "A bear showed me how to get here." He says, "But you're camping down on the Rock Creek Bridge, aren't you?" Well, there was this little tiny bridge that crossed the Rock Creek, and set back in the woods from there, and down by the creek level was a nice little campsite. It's kind of hidden in there, and that's where we were set up. But we had been there for almost a month. And he says, "You're only about a half mile from home from here." You gotta be kidding. He says, "No, you know where such a turn is, and there's that one really big larch tree." He says, "and the top's knocked out of it." I said, "I know exactly where you're talking." He says, "That's just the end of this little road here. This little two-tire path going out." He says, "Takes you right out by that tree." I said, "You know, I've seen this path, but I never hiked in here. I figured that it doesn't go anywhere." He goes, "Yeah, it comes right to this nice little campsite here." He says, "We like to come up here and spend a week at a time." I said, "Well, welcome." And I said, "Now I need to know." And I looked at his fire pit, and that boy had this huge cast iron, almost cauldron-looking pot over the campfire. And I said, "What in the world are you cooking?" He says, "Rutabaga Stew." Now, mind you, Glenn, I can't fake a southern accent like that. Glenn's right out of South Carolina. Strong southern accent. And he goes, "There ain't nothing like the backwoods and a good rutabaga stew." And I said, "I'll tell you what, you gotta have more than rutabagas in there. But whatever it is, I smelled that over a mile away." I said, "You got bears that are coming around curious because it smells so darn good." I said, "Let's take a look at what you're cooking." He went over, and he had a cast iron lid on that thing. Got that lid off of there, stirred it around, and here that kettle, that pot, was full of cut up rutabagas. He said, he says, I took 4 big rutabagas, cut them up, threw them in there. He said, I had 4 carrots, he says, and them buggers were about 1.5 inches across in thickness. He says, and they were about 14 inches long, each one of them. He says, so I chucked them up, threw them in there. So I got rutabagas and carrots. And he said, I had a pound of salt pork. And he said, I cubed up that salt pork and threw that in there. He says, a lot of salt and pepper. And he says, and I threw some cayenne pepper in there. And he said, and I've been cooking it for, he says, oh heck, it's been cooking for at least 2 hours. I said, well, I've been trying to find it for the last hour and a half. So it's been at least 2 hours, because it was smelling strong when I smelled it. Well, he said, well, you're going to hang around for some rutabaga stew, aren't you? I politely said, I really should decline, because the family, you know, they're kind of hoping I'll bring something special home for supper tonight, trout or something. But I said, and I really should get back to camp, let them know I don't have any trout. I'll go out and try to get some, and blah, blah, blah. He says, you don't do that at all. So he yells for his wife, Cindy, and he says, Cindy, jump in the truck, go down, fetch his family, bring them back up here, and we're all going to have rutabaga stew, and we're going to have ourselves some huckleberry pancakes to go with it. Lord, was that a meal. My family and I, and Glenn and Cindy and Clay, their little boy, oh, we ate like a bunch of pigs. But that rutabaga stew, oh my Lord, was that good. Oh, was that good. Now, I hiked around for an hour and a half, using just this for my tracker. Comes rutabaga stew, all that crick crossing and bushwhacking to get there. Yeah, that was nothing. I would have gone up and over a mountain to have been able to have a big bowl of that rutabaga stew and a plate full of huckleberry pancakes. Yeah. What I would do for rutabaga stew. So there's a make you hungry Sty story. Watch for the next one. Thanks for tagging along. This is Sty saying, you all have a nice day. Bye-bye.